Alright, and welcome to 7-1.5 Mixed Review. Now in problem 6 it says find the measure of KL, and so I'll go ahead and just label that with a question mark. When given MJ is 58 degrees, and notice that's arc MJ, 58, and angle KNM, let's go ahead and switch to this nice orange here, KNM is 146 degrees. Now I want you to notice something, that the angles that we would typically use here are right here and right here, and so this 146 is off-centered from our arcs. So the thing that we want to do first is we want to go ahead and find out what are the measures of these purple angles. And the good thing about this is that the angle that we're given and the angle that we want both fall on a straight line. So to start this problem, we're going to have to do 180 degrees minus 146 degrees, which appears to be 34 degrees. Okay, so now that we know that the angle at the vertex is 34, we can now use our formula for a vertex that is inside the circle. We know that our formula is the measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 parentheses arc x plus arc y, and notice it's that plus that is key to the vertex inside. Well, let's go ahead and fill in all the information that we know. We know that our vertex angle is 34 degrees times 1/2 parentheses, and notice our arc x should always be our larger arc. Well, for a vertex inside, if our larger arc is larger than the vertex, or if our arc is larger than the vertex angle, then it is in fact our larger arc, x, plus arc y, our smaller arc. And now it is up to you to solve for arc y. Remember the trick. To get rid of 1/2, what do you have to multiply by? Okay, welcome to problem 7. It says round your answer to the nearest 100th place, and we'll go over that in a second. But I mean, basically, if it rounds up to 0.69 or 0.12 or 0.88, just make sure you're going out 2 decimal places. Okay, problem 2. Given ML is an altitude and that JM is perpendicular to MK, let's see. So we know that, and we know that, and MJ is x plus 6. Let's go ahead and start labeling all these things. Here we have x plus 6, and MK is 7, and ML is 10. Alright, find the value of x. And once again, I cannot stress this enough, this line ML is an altitude, which means we need to use our geometric mean. So what's our geometric mean? Remember, if we have this as A, and this as B, and this as C, we can say this formula, A times B is equal to C squared. So let's go ahead and plug everything in. So we have x plus 6 times 7 is equal to 10 squared. Now from there, notice this 7, even though it's on the right hand side, it's still being multiplied by the parentheses, so we can just distribute to the left. 7 times x is 7x, 7 times 6 is plus 42, and of course 10 squared is 100. That's pretty easy. From here we can subtract 42 from both sides, and we will get 7x is equal to 100 minus 42, which is 58. Now I leave you to finish out the math there and solve for the value of x. Let's move on. Okay, so for problem number 8, it says find the sum of x and y when given that MLK is 4x minus 17. So let's see, MLK is 4x minus 17, and QPN is 4y plus 8. Now notice, what kind of shape do we have here? It appears to me to be a regular heptagon, but you should always count the number of sides. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sides. Okay, and so we know that we have this 7-sided regular heptagon. And we want to use our formula, n minus 2 times 180, to get this started. So let's go ahead and say, you know what? We have 7 sides minus 2 times 180, and 7 minus 2 is 5 times 180, which will of course give us 900. Now, to see how much each one of these sides is, we are going to have to divide this by the number of angles, and so 900 divided by 7 gives us 128.5 0.57 degrees. Now, from here, let's go ahead. From here, let's go ahead and continue on. And so this 128.57 degrees is what we're actually going to have to set each one of these formulas equal to. So I could do this: 4x minus 17 is equal to 128.57. I can also do 4y plus 8 is equal to 128.57. And at the very end of the problem, after you solve for both x and y, it says find the sum of x and y. And so what you're going to have to do is do x plus y, and this will equal your final answer. So solve both of those equations. Solve one of them for x, solve one for y. Take your two answers and add them, and you'll have the answer to this problem. All right, problem number 9 says given NP is equal to 18. Let's see, NP is equal to 18, and NM is equal to 34. So I want you all to notice this is the very first thing that's making this problem a little bit more difficult than you're used to. Rather than giving you NP and PM, I'm giving you the whole thing. So we know that if 34 is the whole and 18 is the part, let's call it part 1, we're going to have to do 34 minus 18. And so 34 minus 18, which is in fact 16, to find the length of PM. And so we can say that's part 2. Okay, now knowing this, we actually have enough information to go ahead and finish this problem. So let's first start out with our kind of our formula statement. We know this. We know that NP times PM is equal to, in this case, KP times PL. So remember, whenever you have two chords intersecting inside a circle, it's part times part is equal to part times part. And let's go ahead and fill in all the things we know. We know NP is 18 times PM is 16 equal to, and here KP is 16.2 times PL, which we want to put in parentheses, which is 4 times x plus 4. Now that's a fairly tricky equation, so let's just kind of go ahead and get started, and let's figure out how we're going to simplify this. So the first thing we'll do is 18 times 16, which is 288, is equal to. Here, let's just go ahead and distribute inside this itty bitty parentheses. We have 16.2 times 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 4 is plus 16. Now at this point, I think you actually have enough information to solve this on your own. Once you find out what x is equal to, notice this question asks you to find the length of KL. KL is this other whole segment. So you're going to have to take KP, 16.2 plus, and over here, since PL is 4x plus 4, let's just kind of distribute that. 4 times x is plus 4x, and 4 times 4 is plus 16. If you plug in your answer from x into that right there, you will get the length of KL. Alright, let's move on to our next example. Okay, for problem number 10, it says the following triangle has been dilated about the point 3 comma negative 2 by a scale factor of 5. So recall, whenever we're dilating about a point, we want to use this formula. The formula is h plus t parentheses x minus h close parentheses comma, k plus t parentheses y minus k close parentheses. And from there, how do we label each one of these things? So it's dilated about the point 3 comma negative 2. That means that that point is your h comma k, or your center of dilation. And then it's asking us what are the coordinates of the triangle's image. So let's just pick one of these. Let's pick letter A. Seems like letter A is over here at 1 comma 5, or x comma y. And don't forget your scale factor of 5 is equal to your t value. So what I'm going to do is show you how to set up A, and I'll even solve out A for you. And if A prime is not the answer, that means you'll have to follow the same steps for point B to get B prime, or C to get to C prime. So it looks like our h value was 3 plus our scale factor of 5 parentheses, our x value is 1, minus our h value of 3, comma. Our k value is negative 2, plus our t value, which is 5 parentheses, our y value is 5, minus, and our k value is negative 2. Now notice before we move on, two negatives should make a positive. And from here, it's fairly straightforward. Our very next step will always be to take care of what's inside the parentheses. And so we can say, okay, you know what? 3 plus 5 parentheses, comma, negative 2 plus 5 parentheses. And inside the parentheses, 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 5 plus 2 is 7. And now we can go ahead and tackle our multiplication. So I have 3, comma, negative 2, parentheses. And it turns out that 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. And 5 times 7 is positive 35. From here, to finish out the problem, 3 minus 10 is negative 7, comma, negative 2 plus 35 is positive 33, and there's our value for a prime. Now that is not in the answer choices. You'll have to follow the exact same steps for B or C to find B prime or C prime and see which one is correct. Okay, problem 11 says write a false statement including two fractions. So let's just kind of label some things here. Let's say, you know what if this was part 1 and this was part 2 and this was part 3 and this was part 4, just kind of looking at those segments. How could I make a false statement? Well, I could say something like this. Kn over Nm, remember that's part 1 over part 2, is equal to part 3, let's say LP, over, but if I want to make a false statement, rather than using part 4, I could call this whole thing, call this whole 2, and so I could say over ML. So there's one example of a very false statement, because here you can see it's part over part is equal to part over whole. That really would not work out. Let's go ahead and try one more. We notice that NP is a part, so let's call that part, let's call that part 5. But KL is clearly a whole, let's call that whole 3. So what's something else we could do? Well, let me go ahead and erase that. Now let's go ahead and label one other thing. Let's go ahead and label this whole thing as whole number 1. Well, another thing we could do is we could do part 1 over part 2. So we could say like, okay, N over NM is congruent to NP over this whole thing down here, KL. So this is another way of saying kind of the same thing. Here we have part over part is congruent to part over whole, and you can clearly see that that is another example of a false statement. In fact, this is the most common one that they'll throw at you. Alright, let's move on to our final example. Okay, for number 12, it says find the measure of angle NML. So let's see, there's NML. Put a little question mark there. When given PQ is 52 and arc NL is 118. Now let's notice a couple things here. One, this is a vertex that is outside. And 2, the 52 is our smaller arc, so it must be arc Y. And 118 is our larger arc, so it must be arc X. Our formula is the measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 arc X minus arc Y. And notice that minus sign comes from it being a vertex outside the circle. So let's plug in everything we know. We do not know the measure of angle 1, however, we know everything else. 1/2 times arc X is 118, minus arc Y, which is 52, and I will leave y'all to solve the rest of this on your own. Good luck.